Hello and welcome to the Atheist Enlightenment. I am your host, Josh the Archon. Today we're going to be talking about a plethora of subjects. So we're going to first be talking about the atheist community in general. And then we're going to be talking about actually the atheist enlightenment and the changes that are going to happen within the atheist enlightenment coming from now and ever forward. So this is the thing that I really want to hopefully give on to you guys as like our plan or the plan behind the atheist enlightenment in and of itself. So before we get started, I really do want to thank our Patreon supporters, Linar, Mikey Famine, TART, and Luara Magee for actually helping out big time with helping me do what I do here on the Atheist Enlightenment and getting information out to you, the viewer. So again, I really do appreciate and thank our subscribers, our Patreon supporters. Now, the one thing that for me, when I look at the atheist community, there's been a lot of things that helped me out through the years. Ever since the age of 20, I have left religion completely and delved into I would say mid-20s. I have left religion completely and been fully into the atheist movement in and of itself. And I am an extremely I've been extremely thankful for how the community has kind of brought and helped me work out certain issues that I might have had and so on and so forth with understanding what it really means to leave behind religion and that you don't need religion in order to actually formulate your own aspirations and your own, I guess you could say, moral compasses and move forward. So for that, I really thank the atheist community, or maybe even the new atheists, for welcoming me in. But at the same time, I've started to realize that there's been certain instances within the atheist community as well where we're starting to see backlash, in a sense, in people that were atheists returning back into the fold of religiosity. And a lot of people think that that's perfectly fine, or spiritualism and everything like that. And a lot of people think, well, that's fine. Like atheists, like you could be an atheist and be spiritual, and like Buddhists or like tarot readers or whatever the situation may be. But for me, I find that if we utilize, because that's the thing, being an atheist, at least for me, was more about separating myself from things that were relatively spiritual, things that were relatively non empirically based, right? And really delving into what is really out there and what is not. And I have a feeling that ever since 2015, I would say, the atheist movement, sadly, or the new atheist movement, has slowly but surely started to lose its wheels. Like the thing that had made the new atheist movement so strong beforehand, with Richard Dawkins, with Sam Harris, with Daniel Dennett, and Christopher Hitchens, and let alone, I know, Matt Dillahunty and other individuals at that. It seems, and there's a tendency right there where I'm finding like the movement itself has kind of lost steam and lost the purpose that was driving it to in the first place. And I started to realize that there's a couple of things that are missing. There's a couple of things that I find that are missing within the atheist community in and of itself in order to actually help kind of unify the different atheists that are there and the different islands of atheists which are out there. Like, I mean, conceptual islands, not real islands. The conceptual islands that atheists are contented with, in a sense. I want to, like how I said beforehand, bring those islands back, right? Back into the fold and kind of have a better united front on all aspects of social well being. Now, what is the social well being that I'm wanting to ascribe to? What is the social well being that I'm wanting to talk about? The first thing that I find that the atheist movement, which is good, is that it confronts the ideology of God, right? But I find that there's one thing that's the issue, one thing. And that is, I find the atheist movement too focused on the idea of God and not on the idea of sociability. So, what I want what the atheist enlightenment wishes to do is that we wish to actually tackle those sociability, uh, that sociability status, in a sense. We want to tackle that more than we wish to actually tackle the God. Um, Oh, the chair in and of itself. Okay, you know what? Let me actually move and change chairs really quick so that you don't constantly hear that, because I know how insane that must actually. One second. Bop, bop, bop. Here we go. Sorry. Okay. Ooh, I just rammed into the table. Okay. So let's get started. Again, my apologies. I think this chair is much better. I can move, and it doesn't really make any noise. I think we're Thunderbirds ago. So this is the first thing that I want to tackle. So the thing that you're actually going to start seeing on this show is predominantly going to be things that help you as a person grow, and as an atheist grow, right? So for me, what we're really going to be focusing on is sort of like investments, money saving. We're going to tackle the question of God, obviously. We're going to tackle the question of let's just say of self-help as well, right? Because that's the number one thing that I think that the atheist community is kind of lacking there, is kind of like the self-help, to build on the self and to kind of solidify your fundamental views, and let alone not just your fundamental views, but you being okay with who you are as a person and everything like that. Because I think that's something that really matters in the end of the day, right? It doesn't really matter if there's a God or not a God. The real thing that matters is that you're happy doing what you're doing, right? If you're not happy doing with what you're doing, it doesn't matter if there's a God or not God. You're going to be the one that's not happy with the existence that you have. And henceforth, this is the thing that I'm going to really try to promote. And as I stated, we will still be talking about God. We will still be talking about philosophy. We'll still be talking about science. We'll still be talking about reason and atheism. But the reality is that I want to try to tackle the actual social standards that are there and actually elaborate on them in a way that can actually help you, the viewer. If you need help, if you don't need help, then hopefully it's good pointers that can help build you or have a concept out there that is completely different from the concept that you might have in the beginning, right? So this is the thing that we're really going to tackle here on the Atheist Enlightenment. The other thing that I find with the atheist community that I find is, how could I say, lacking, sadly, is that we're very good online. The atheist community online is a beautiful community. But I find, sadly, that the atheist community out in the world, not in the online world or in the meta world, but in the world that is, I don't want to say like within the real, because that sounds kind of but I mean, if we're looking at the world affairs, right? The reality is that we as atheists are very few in number compared to the realities which are out there, right? We're extremely few in number. And have a feeling that we are so caught up in the metaverse that we're not necessarily caught up in the real world, which is out there, right? So, what I also want to do, and this is what the Atheist Enlightenment is going to try to bring to you, the viewer, is real, tangible world changes, right? That's what we're going to try to do for you, the viewer, because I think that's the thing that's also pushing people away from atheism. It's like, thank you for teaching me philosophy. Thank you for teaching me like the sciences that I might not have known. Thank you for teaching me all these things. But the reality is that what are we actually seeing change? That's the reality. Are we seeing change, or are we just seeing the same old happening constantly? And the reality is sadly, we're seeing the same old happening. And sometimes we're even seeing the sense of regression, right? The sense of regression back from, like, let's just say the Donald Trump years, for instance. That literally took a step back for the United States, never forward. That was a back step. And the thing is that we as a community need to start thinking how to grow the community, not just how to try to keep the community. How can I say it? I don't want to say it like uh, stagnant, because it's not stagnant. It's growing, but it's growing slower than usual. But that's the thing, right, Linear? Like, I think the reality is that these good points that these atheist channels are creating are good within the metaverse, right? They're great within the metaverse, and sometimes they're great within the real world aspect. But the thing is that we don't have the movement that is out there in the real world like we do, that we have within the world of the metaverse, right? So there's a difference. There's a discrepancy between the numbers that are quote unquote in the metaverse and the numbers that are in the real world, in a sense. And I think these are the things which are actually the issue. I think these are the things that we as atheists need to start looking at and stating, how do we move from point A to point B? Right? Because our numbers exploded from 2008 all the way into 2015. But as I stated, the wheels slowly but surely started to fall off. And through these falling off of the wheels, what ended up happening was that we lost the steam that we once had. And other atheists that have been following since 2008 all the way to this point are slowly but surely starting to question, or not all atheists, obviously, but certain atheists are starting to question the actual movement in and of itself, and others have been completely disenchanted by it, in a sense, and other atheists have completely and absolutely changed their ideological view to go back into some sort of spiritualism, or go right back into the belief that they left. And I think as atheists, we should look at that and state, well, what is the issue and what is the problem, and why we have this type of how can I say it? Because it's not regression, but is this recidivism, I guess is the word I'm looking for, of individuals going back to the belief that they once had, that they first thought was regressive in the way of thinking, but now they're back into it again, and sometimes with even more fervor than the fervor that they left in the beginning. Right? So this is the thing that we in the Atheist Enlightenment, or I in the Atheist Enlightenment for now, but hopefully in the future other individuals could help hold that mantle of responsibility as well, into promoting and growing, but at the same exact time creating a quote unquote vanguard of the well, Linear. I don't mean me, but I mean, like, hopefully later on other individuals could come on to the actual channel as well with the same kind of thought process, rather than with the with maybe their, I don't want to say misconceived notions, but with the notion that being like only talking about the God world is the only thing that actually matters within the realm of atheism. Because in reality, the God world is only a portion of the reality of the world that we live in. And I think that if we can tackle that, we can really start not just the God world, but I'm just talking about the social ability aspect, then we as atheists have the upper hand. And if we can really focus on that, that is where we can really grow as a movement, because that's what atheism is. Atheism, and let alone secular humanism and all the rest of the isms that are within the umbrella of the atheistic movement, are basically a movement to help build something better in a non-God world. And this is where the Atheist Enlightenment really wishes to bring forth these new ideas. And don't get me wrong, there's other channels that are out there too doing their thing, but we're really going to try to bring to you, the viewer, actual tangible change in the future. We're going to try to really tackle the problems that are out there and show the viewer. Oh, that's actually a very good question, Eric. I think the one thing is that I think that atheists, I do want to make atheists, or not make, but I mean, I do want to help people or show people that atheism is the more logical way of looking at the world that we live in. And the way that we can tackle the world can be 20 times better underneath an atheistic perspective than underneath any type of other perspective, in my opinion, at least. But the thing is that I do find secularist theists also. No, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly, it's all good, Eric. But I do find that secularists are also extremely helpful, right? Because even though that they might have a God world in their mind, already I find them halfway to atheist standard, right? Because they don't believe in the Bible literally. And sometimes out of the secularists, to tell you the truth, they have cut out complete scriptures from their book. And from that point of view, I do find that that is a help towards a better world. But however, I do find that it's also a detriment because they are still thinking in God world status, right? So when we really look at these issues, we have to really tackle them in a way that can actually help grow, in my opinion at least, the atheistic movement rather than grow the secularist movement in as a whole. Because I think the more atheists that there are, we will start seeing the world moving in a completely different direction than where it's leaning now. And if we're able to tackle that in the right way and in an active way, then we can slowly but surely start seeing the secularists and liberal, let's just say religionists, start thinking, oh, well, maybe these individuals over here are promoting something that I can agree with. And if that is the standard that they're holding by, and that they think that, let's just say, our sort of, our, how can I say it? That on our side the grass is greener rather than the side that they're in the first place, I think that that will show that they can slowly but surely start to trickle in over onto our side. And the more that we have on our side, the more change that we can create. And the more change that we can create, the better the world off will be. And the better off the world be, the better that our next generation can live in a more peaceful and successful world for them. Because that's how I see, at least with me, that's how I see our very existence, is to bring about the change that is necessary so that the next generation doesn't need to fight as hard as we do. And that's continuously down the line of all other generations prior to us, is how do we create something for the next generation to benefit from, and let alone that we benefit from ourselves. Right, right. I completely agree, Eric. I completely agree. And I think the reality of that, right, is that the atheist movement as it stands itself doesn't really have a fundamental that's there, right? And when people hear a fundamental, they think, "Oh my God, you're trying to make atheism into a whatever a cult movement, or we're trying to force everybody to have one type of thought process." And that's not at all the standard that I'm looking at. The thing that I'm actually looking at in and of itself is a fundamental that can help other atheists feel that they are standing secure on a fundamental ground, right? Because when you're standing secure, anybody who's trying to hit your worldview are going to end up realizing, wow, their foundation is much stronger than it used to be. And it'll be harder to move people from one area to the next, right? Meaning that it's going to be harder to I wouldn't want to say persuade, but to lie to an individual who is an atheist to move into a more spiritual realm when they have a fundamental that's actually solid and sound. So that's the thing that I'm looking at, and that's the thing that I'm slowly trying to build with the atheist enlightenment, is give atheists that fundamental that they can now stand on and that they can feel secure, and not just like feeling like they're standing on sand, right? Because you can't make a foundation out of sand. You slowly but surely start to realize that your your foundation is just going to crack, or not even crack, it's just going to crumble underneath you. But when you have a proper foundation, it's very hard and very difficult for it to crumble underneath you. The harder that foundation is, the harder it's going to be for any other individual to try to knock you off that foundation to begin with. And it'll take more than just a couple of sayings of hearsay that will convince an individual otherwise. So that's mostly what the atheist enlightenment is trying to bring to you, the viewer, something that is tangible, something that you can actually work with, and something that can actually, in the future, hopefully, make lives better. And that's what we're really trying to hit up, and that's what we're really trying to bring forward to this new atheist movement, I guess. And that's why, for me, sadly, I've started to realize that maybe, and this doesn't mean like, oh, okay, I'm starting to have second thoughts about atheism. Absolutely not. I'm still an atheist. But I have a feeling that the pendulum must move in a different direction. And what that means is, where I'm thinking about moving or at least the atheist enlightenment towards, is a new type of atheistic thought process, and something that is much more foundational, and something that is much more, how do I say it, active within the community, and something that's much active within engaging theists and apologetics. And that's where I want to try to bring the atheist enlightenment. But in order for me to do that, I got to sadly separate myself from the new atheists, in a sense. And not new atheists like people who just left their religion, but I mean the new atheist movement, and create something that's a little bit, that's in a different direction. And that's why I think that the channel and myself is going to start moving towards, like, the channel's name is going to change just a bit into the Atheist Hyperborean Enlightenment, because that's the one thing I really do believe, that there needs to be a change. There has to be a change. Titan, how are you doing, my friend? Titan Uranus, how are you doing? But there has to be a change. there must be, in order for us to have something that is tangible. And I don't think that we have that as of yet. We're building on it, but I don't think we have that. And once we have that, that'll just make the atheist movement much more solidified, in my opinion. So that's the thing, and that's one of the things that I actually wanted to talk about based on the Atheist Enlightenment in and of itself, is that specific change of name. Now, when people hear Borean, they wonder, what does that even mean, right? What does a Hyperborean even mean? Now, that means that it's something that's exotic and that is separated from the rest, right? So that means the way that we do things are completely different compared to the way that other atheists do things. The first thing is that we want to try to give the best information we possibly can to you, the viewer, and to individuals who wish to join this new atheist Hyperborean enlightenment. An inhabitant of absolutely. But that's the thing that's really different, right? Is that if you continue reading up on that, if you continue reading up on that, what it will actually show you is that it's actually the idea of something that's exotic and something that is separated from the norm, right? So if you open up Wikipedia and really, or anything actually, and really focus on the actual readings of it, you get to see the many definitions underneath that specific name. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to promote, as something that is separate from the rest and that tries to bring you the best that we can possibly bring you. And that's based on information, that's based on philosophy as well, that's based on science, and that's also based on reason, and even just the atheist movement in general. So that is going to be our major. Exactly, Hyperborean, exactly. There's multiple different ways that it goes. So you can actually see multiple different definitions of what it states. But for me, it's actually based on the separation of from the mass of the group into doing your own thing and into engaging a new way of looking at things and a new way of tackling issues and problems in the future. And that's the way that I think that the atheist movement should be moving, at least, in my opinion. And that's why this is what we here on the Atheist Enlightenment wish to promote, is this type of thought process, the type of thought process that is building forth something new and something that is beneficial for the atheist movement in general. Because this doesn't mean that we wish to not engage with other atheists. That's absolutely incorrect, and that's absolutely foolishness. What we do want to do is actually build the atheistic movement better, in a sense. We want to build upon what those in the past have already done. The new atheists literally took us to a whole new higher extent, but sadly, the new atheists are slowly starting to dwindle. But the thing is that doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be something else that can help build that foundation. And kind of like how not Richard Dawkins, but Stephen Hawking said, you must stand on the shoulders of giants before you in order to actually build upon ideas that have already brought great things to us and make them even better than there were before. And that's what we're going to try to do in the Atheist Enlightenment. So that's the reality of what we're trying to bring to you. But besides that, I really do believe that the atheist movement is a beautiful movement in and of itself. And it's just sad that I'm seeing individuals leaving to other belief systems, or even leaving to some sort of spiritual need in a sense, because I think that the atheist movement should already have the need that is there for you as an atheist. There shouldn't be something that is missing. There shouldn't be something that is awry. Okay, Titan. Absolutely. I can definitely explain that, Titan Urana. The new atheist movement predominantly started with Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett. And predominantly, this movement started within the early 2000s. So it was more confrontational with the theist in general. It was more trying to show the normal, not the normal, but the citizen themselves, the layman themselves, that the wrongs of religion were severe, and this is why. And Richard Dawkins, before all the issues with Richard Dawkins surfaced, obviously, was the one who was tackling these problems head on. Daniel Dennett was tackling these problems head on, and they were actually winning huge. Like if we even look at statistics, the amount of atheists within the United States and within the world itself actually grew because of these individuals and also individuals that came after them. And even, don't get me wrong, individuals before them who created really good philosophical statements and stuff like that in order to build up the atheistic movement in a particular way. So that is very true. But the new atheist movement in particular is from the point of, I believe, the early 2000s all the way up to, I would say, 2015 was like the high tide of what was called the new atheists in a sense. And then later on, it just started to crumble because even though that it was based on, no, yeah, I guess you can say it. It was based on science, but the problem was that it didn't have anything that was based on sociability. And from that point, it fell from within, or started to fall from within. So the new atheists were, I guess you can say, more hostile to. Right? Yes, Linear. That's exactly right. The movement has become a lot more docile ever since because I think people have started to become disheartened and they're like, well, people are always going to be religious and that's the way that things are and so on and so forth. I think that's the wrong way of actually looking at it because just like how you saw in other time spans and other time periods, people are able to change through certain valid argumentations. That's how Christianity grew from the paganistic roots that it grew from, right? It was able to grow because of the changing ideas of people, and let alone, don't get me wrong, yes, Christianity was also hostile to individuals that didn't have its thought process either. So you are right based on that. But still, the idea is that people's minds can change, and we've seen this since the time of the polytheist to the rise of the monotheists. And look at today. Do we see anybody who's a polytheist? Yes. But the reality of the situation is that the polytheist isn't what you would actually call a real. Oh, actually, I don't want to say that. That's really stupid to say. But if you try to go back in time and you look at the polytheists back in ancient times and the polytheists now, they are completely different with their practices. Completely and absolutely different. So you can't bring back something that has been dead for a thousand years or 2,000 years. My apologies. Oh no, I think I could say like 1,400, 1,500 years, and that's just the way how it is. So that's the thing is that atheists should look at changing people's minds because I do think that if we have a proper foundation, then we can actually help that change. We can actually help the changing of those individuals' minds, just like how the Christians changed all the paganist minds in due time. And that's the thing. That's the number one thing that I find that a lot of atheists don't necessarily think about, is that they're stuck in the present, but they don't necessarily see how the future can be. They don't see that through arduous struggle, that the future can be something much better than it is now, and much better for for our next generation and their next generation and their next generation. But it needs to start at some point. It has to build at some point. And this is what the Atheist Enlightenment is hoping on doing, is to build that foundation for ourselves and for those of the next generation. But besides that, I really do, as I constantly say, I really do appreciate the new atheist movement, and let alone the atheists in general, for being so generous to me when I left my religion, when I left my belief system. And that is what I wish to bring forward. That is the true aspect that I wish to bring, is that I don't want people to feel freaked out about, oh, okay, well, he's going to try to change atheism for the worse. I want to build upon it. I want to help individuals truly reach the fulfillment of their potential. And I think that the atheist movement has a lot of potential that is just untapped at the moment. But if we have individuals that are willing and able to make changes within the world, then what we can actually start seeing is a world worth living. Well, the world is worth living in now, but I mean a better world that we can build, and a better world that we can actually start seeing scientific and modernization and everything like that explode in a way that would be beautiful, in a sense, for the humanity in and of itself. And that's what I look for. I look for something that is for the benefit of the whole rather than the benefit of the few, in a sense. But again, that is what the Atheist Enlightenment really wishes to promote, espouse, and build upon. And at the same time, just like how I stated in the beginning, we wish to help individuals feel secure within themselves. Because when you feel secure within yourself, that's when somebody is the happiest, is when they feel secure with themselves, and not by sometimes giving to other individuals, but they still feel insecure within their own skin or whatever the situation may be. So that's what the Atheist Enlightenment is going to be focusing on and espousing. But besides that, let's talk about something else. Another really good change that I think that individuals might really like, based on the Atheist Enlightenment. But this will predominantly be probably a year from now. So what we wish to do within a year from now, and hopefully we will be able to do that within a year, is we really want to create the very first, in a sense, atheist community centers, in a sense. Or not in a sense, but we want to create the first atheist community centers. Because that's the thing, right? Already we have churches all over the place. But is there any real place for an atheist to go to in order just to, I don't know, have conversations amongst themselves, to have to do something with other fellow atheists on the outside? No. Well, predominantly all we have is within the metaverse. So that's the thing that I'm going to try to strive for, is to creating these community centers for atheists that can actually benefit us and help us grow as a community. Because through the community centers, we can then start promoting uh, well, obviously, atheistic sports, atheistic competitions, these type of things that would be beneficial for community building as a whole. And I think once we're able to do that, then whole new leaps and bounds can actually be attained. But if we're constantly within the metaverse, there's no way that we can possibly be thinking about how we can change things on the outside world if we're only stuck within the metaversal world. And henceforth, this is why I think creating these community centers will be the next step for the atheistic movement, and will be something that will bring benefit to the atheistic movement as well, because now they can feel, we as atheists can feel secure, safe, and more more able to express ourselves within these type of community centers. But again, I'm hoping to be getting this done within a year or in a year. Culture is important for everyone. Would be nice to. Exactly, Linear, exactly. And that's the thing that we're going to try to build, in a sense, because I think that when people look at atheists, right, the reality is that atheists are still, or most atheists are still utilizing the Christian culture that they left. And with the atheist enlightenment, or the atheist hyperborean enlightenment, what we're really going to give to the atheist. I'm back. I am nope. I am so sorry. Okay. I am so sorry for that, everybody. I am back. I didn't mean for the laptop to cut. But okay, let's continue on. I see that there's a couple of questions that were actually stated. Um, okay. Let me just try to see something. Nope, hold on. Nope, I just starred something, which I don't want to star. My apologies, everybody. Okay. I think that there was a couple of questions. Okay, perfect. I got it. A couple of statements that, or not statements, but questions that Titan had. Um, Christians did it with the edge of a sword. Titan Uranus, I would agree, but at the same exact time, there was also certain time periods, just like with let's just say Russia converting to Christianity or Orthodox Christianity, that was actually done by two monks going into the Russian territory and literally helping them formulate their language. I believe one was called Cyril, and that's why it was called Syriac language or something like that. It was predominantly borrowed from the Greek Orthodoxy and developed into what we see as the Russian language today, or of that time until now, I should say. So, with that being stated, like Christianity did in some areas conquer by the sword, but they also conquered other areas by the word. And the thing that we got to look at is obviously looking at how the word persuaded people rather than obviously the sword. So the prospect that we got to look at is how do we first off help individuals formulate, let's just say, not arguments, but formulate statements in order to have a steadier ground within debates or within even conversations, right? Because I know that there's certain atheists that are out there that might not have a very good reason, or not very good reason, but they might not have a good rebuttal to the statement that a theist is making, right? And then what happens is that certain people sadly take that not good rebuttal as a defeater to their own belief system and not necessarily as something as they just need to apply other argumentations or other statements, right, that are beneficial for the actual context of said debate or said conversation. And if we're able to do that, then I think that we can 100% change people's minds with word rather than sword. So, but I do agree with you at that, Titan Uranus. Yes, Christianity in certain points of its history did conquer with the edge of a sword, and you're absolutely right. But there is certain aspects of Christianity conquering with word, and we can predominantly see that before the 3rd century, or actually, I would say the 4th century AD, where Christianity didn't have any swords to propagate what it wished to bring upon the world. Right? All they had was their word, and their word had huge influence on individuals who were slaves. That had huge influence on individuals who were poor. Had huge influence, even in certain aspects, on those who were rich. Right? And these are the things that we got to look at, is that how can we as atheists build a said criterion that when people hear it, they're like, wow, this is something that I want to actually delve into, rather than just like, wow, this is something I want to delve into. But then after, when we look at it in a cultural sense, as Linar stated, it's more or less like, we don't really have anything to uh, to actually give to atheists. And that's the thing that I want to do, is I want to at least give some sort of standard that atheists can use in order to prop themselves up a little more than what they had. So, but as I stated, I agree with your statement on that. Why is this not working? Okay, there we go. Da, da, da. Our culture is a sea of Abrahamics. You're absolutely right, Titan Uranus. Our culture is a sea of the Abrahamic religions. But the reality is that that doesn't need to be the case for the future. And reality, how we are, or how we can do that in reality, is actually start formulating something that is separate thereof of the Christian way of looking at things, or of how the Abrahamic belief systems look at things. And we can definitely do that. Like, don't get me wrong, I know that most ideas are predominantly built upon ideas prior, right? But we can still build the ideas in a sense that can then be built into a nouveau cultural perspective for atheists, and that atheists can use and feel that they have, as I stated, a solid foundation to stand on. Questions might be wrong word, but statements, I guess. Okay, yeah, true, true. Good point, good point. Exactly. Um, so sounds like great ideas. So thank you, Eric, for stating that. And that's the whole entire point, is to bring forth ideas that sound, and not just sound, but when put into practice, aren't contradictory, that we can actually use as potential to grow the movement, and at the same exact time to have a unifying factor within the movement as well. So there's like a two-pronged way of doing it, which is first off through growth, and secondly through a unification factor. And I think if we got those two, then atheism is set for however long. And already atheism has been around for quite some time, ever since, I would say, the pirates, for instance, who were ancient Greek philosophers. So ever since then, and most probably even before them, the atheist movement was kind of formulated, or not formulated, but just came about because obviously there were people who didn't believe the gods of the past or the spirits of the past and wanted to step away from that. And that's literally what, well, I believe all atheists have done. But now there needs to be a solidifying factor that can not just be, well, I don't believe in this God and henceforth atheism, but now it can be something a little more like, okay, I don't believe in this God, plus culture, plus something, plus something, plus something would be the best way of tackling it, at least in my opinion. So these are the things that I think we were just babbling. So I think that this is the way that we need to move forward with the atheistic movement. And that's, again, as I keep saying 100 times now, that's what the Atheist Enlightenment wishes to bring to you, the viewer. And hopefully we can spark something within the viewer that wishes, like, once we get big enough, that we can actually start acting upon what we're stating. And then from there, we can actually start seeing real world changes. And as I stated, real world changes. True, true. I might need to think of a different name for it. But all in all, I think this is something that that we need, I think. And I think the Hyperboreans is the best way of leading this particular movement into creating something that atheists can stand on that has some foundation to it. Um, so yeah, so if anybody does have any questions or have any pushback, please push back. I don't mind. I love having people push back on some of the statements that I made, or some of the if you just have questions, that's awesome. And if not, I'll just continue having my own spiel and stuff like that, and that's perfectly fine too. But yeah, so that's what also the other thing that I look for, because the atheist community has provided this, and that is a really good online, as I stated in the beginning, a very good online community. And what I want to do is develop on that. What I want to do is develop our online community and our online capabilities better than how we have it now. And not just better, but it shouldn't just be based on debates or based on whatever the situation may be, or is there a God, is there not a God, or whatever the situation is, but it should actually be based on building a sense of community. Things like we'd want. True. I mean, we can definitely we can definitely think about the name. We need skee ball. Damn right. Like, we can definitely think of a better name than that. And don't get me wrong, I will think of uh, something else. And if anybody actually has a better name and they want to actually just throw out their ideas or an example of an idea to me, please do. And if you really like the name just Atheist Enlightenment and you want to keep that, that's perfectly fine too, or whatever. And I'll keep. But but yeah. So all in all, what I want to also do is build a really good online community for us as atheists. New Atheist Enlightenment. That's actually a pretty good idea. Yeah, I might actually. Huh, that's something to think about. Thank you, Linear, for the idea. But yeah, so build a new community, build something that is based on the outside, and build that as a sense of community, and build these community centers for the benefit of atheist individuals, and continue to actually aim towards new. Hmm, that's good too. That's good too. And that is what we wish to bring. But it's coming up on the hour right now. So if anybody has any questions, again, please ask away. If not, then within a minute, I'll close down shop, and I will thank you for coming on and being a part of this experience. But for but for now, I'll just state my final words in a sense. So again, thank you all for uh, coming through and supporting or liking or subscribing. It is, I greatly appreciate that. And what we will do, Linear, will do. I will keep everybody updated on the name change. Um, Also, I will provide the link to the Patreon below in the description. So if you do want to check out the Patreon page, go ahead, to your liking and to your leisure. Again, I want to thank Linear. I want to Mikey Famine, TART, Luara Magee for supporting us on Patreon and for helping me do what I'm doing here in the Atheist Enlightenment. And for all of you, thank you so much for coming on through. I am so thankful for it. And this is how the enlightenment slowly but surely begins to grow. So thank you all so much. It's been a fantastic evening, and I will see you tomorrow at the same time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. Central Time, and 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I believe that's what it stands for. Anyways, you guys have a great night, and see you tomorrow on the Atheist Enlightenment. Thank you all, and be well.